Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. I'm so happy you've decided to join me. Before we get started, I'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Not only does it help support the community here, but it ensures that you don't miss out on future videos all about improving your English skills. Subscribing is a quick and easy way to stay motivated, and we're all about motivation in this space. So if you're ready to boost your English and feel more confident, just hit that subscribe button right now. You'll be glad you did. Now let's talk about one of the biggest challenges English learners face: understanding native speakers. It doesn't matter whether you're studying for an exam, hoping to get a better job, or planning to travel the world. Being able to listen and understand real fast, everyday English is a huge goal for a lot of people. And it can feel pretty intimidating at times. Maybe you've done well in English classes, read textbooks, studied grammar, and learned vocabulary lists by heart. But then you turn on a movie, or you try to have a conversation with a native speaker, and suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I can't follow everything they're saying. It can be shocking, frustrating, even discouraging. You might feel like all that studying didn't quite prepare you for the real-world speed and flow of the language. In this video, I'm going to share the secrets to improving your English listening skills and truly understanding native speakers easily. We'll talk about the reasons why listening to real, spoken English is so tough. We'll also get into practical strategies you can start using right away, techniques and methods that will help you train your ear and keep your motivation high. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for stepping up your listening comprehension, so you can follow conversations with friends, colleagues, or strangers, and feel a whole lot more confident along the way. Let's start with a little backstory. I've met countless English learners who have struggled with listening comprehension. For instance, there's my friend Ricardo. He moved from Brazil to London for a new job opportunity. He was super excited to work in an international office environment, but he quickly found that in team meetings, his colleagues spoke really quickly, using a lot of British slang and expressions he'd never heard before. Ricardo would sit there nodding politely, trying his best to keep up, but often he had no clue what was going on. He felt embarrassed, which then made him quiet. And because he stayed quiet, he missed the chance to ask questions in the meeting. Sound familiar? Maybe you've been there. Ricardo eventually got some strategies that I'll share later, and he improved so much that he was able to lead a meeting himself, speaking in a clear, confident English. That's the kind of transformation we're looking for. Another story comes to mind. Ayumi, a student from Japan who spent a semester studying abroad in the United States. She had studied grammar thoroughly, she could write great essays and pass almost any written test. But when she walked into the dorm lounge to chat with her American classmates, she found herself lost. Conversations flew by at lightning speed. Hey, you gonna grab lunch? Let me know if you wanna come. I dunno, man, that place kinda sucks. Ayumi recognized lunch and man, but the rest just sounded like a blur of informal contractions and slang. She often resorted to smiling and nodding, catching maybe 50% of what people said. She felt discouraged. However, she discovered a few listening exercises like shadowing and practiced with her dorm mates. Over time, she not only understood them better but started using those natural expressions herself. She learned how to say, "Wanna grab lunch?" instead of "Do you want to eat lunch?" in that formal textbook style. It was a breakthrough that gave her a ton of confidence. And then there's someone like Ahmed, a professional from Egypt who traveled frequently for business. He was fantastic at reading and writing English emails, but struggled when coworkers from different English-speaking countries gathered for conferences. He realized that everyone had different accents, one colleague from Scotland, another from Australia, and still another from the southern part of the United States. He had never been taught to handle all these variations, so in many discussions, he found himself missing key details and feeling anxious. He worried about making mistakes or not catching important phrases. But with focused practice on different accents, and by actively working on his listening skills, he made big strides in understanding everyone around him. Why are these stories so common? One major reason is that most of us learn English in a very controlled environment, often focusing on written exercises. There's a big gap between how English is written and how it's actually spoken. In writing, you see words spelled out in full, I am going to, or let me see. But in real conversation, those phrases morph into I'm gonna, or let me see, or I dunno. Slang, contractions, reductions, and relaxed pronunciation are standard in casual, native-level speech. This is true in any language, of course, but English can be especially challenging because these reductions can sometimes happen so quickly. You barely hear the consonants or vowels that you learned in class. So you end up thinking, wait, did they just say gonna? Did they say gotta? What happened there? The speed factor is also crucial. Native speakers, when talking to each other, rarely slow down for the benefit of non-native listeners, unless asked. They connect words, speak in a rhythmic flow, and use a variety of informal expressions you might not find in your average textbook. And that's not even getting into regional accents. American English alone can sound vastly different depending on whether someone is from California, New York, or Texas. British English is packed with diverse accents too: London, Liverpool, Manchester, Scotland, and so on. Plus, there's Australian, Canadian, Irish, South African English, and the list goes on. Each accent comes with its own intonation patterns and quirks in pronunciation. No wonder learners get overwhelmed. So here's the truth. If you want to master English listening, you can't just rely on the old-school method of reading grammar books and memorizing word lists. You need direct, consistent exposure to real spoken English in all its messy, fast, expressive glory. And that might sound scary at first, but trust me, it's actually really exciting. It means your journey involves engaging with interesting content, TV shows, podcasts, music, films, and conversations with actual humans. That's a lot more fun than just flipping through a dictionary, right? Let's talk about some of the most common problems and the secrets to overcoming them. We've touched on a few of these, but let's go deeper. First up, fast speech and word reductions. This is where you'll hear I'm gonna go instead of I am going to go. It might be what are you doing, spoken as whatcha doin', or what are you up to, becoming what you're up to, and did you eat, might sound like did ya eat, or even did ya eat. If you're not prepared for these kinds of reductions, you'll be left scratching your head thinking, what did they just say? The secret here is exposure and practice. You need to hear these reduced forms over and over, and ideally try to repeat them, so your brain starts recognizing them automatically. Second big challenge, different accents. Again, you might be very comfortable with a standard American accent, maybe the one you hear on CNN or in Hollywood films, but then you tune in to someone from, say, Liverpool, and suddenly you feel like you're listening to another language altogether. The secret is not to avoid difficult accents, but to train your ear by seeking out a variety of them. We'll discuss specific ways to do that in a moment. Third challenge, slang and informal expressions. Even if you understand the basic grammar and vocabulary, slang can throw you off. You might wonder what I'm beat means, or I'm down for that, or I'm in. Slang expressions and idioms are part of everyday English. You don't need to memorize all of them at once, but you do need a method for gradually expanding your knowledge of these informal phrases. Often it's through authentic materials, TV shows, movies, YouTube videos, music lyrics, and also by interacting with native speakers who actually use these phrases. Fourth challenge, the gap between written English and spoken English. In writing, everything is spelled out clearly, punctuation helps separate ideas, and we're often more formal. In speaking, you'll encounter incomplete sentences, random pauses, filler words like like, you know. People will drop little words or connect them in unusual ways. So if you read a transcript and then listen to the actual audio, you might be shocked at how different it sounds. One big secret here is to actually read transcripts while listening to audio. That helps you map the written word to the spoken word. But remember, you'll want to practice not just understanding, but also using these new expressions so you can speak more naturally yourself. Now let's get to the secrets, the actionable strategies you can use to tackle these challenges. The first one I always recommend is the shadowing technique. Shadowing is when you listen to a short segment of speech, maybe a line or two from a podcast or a scene from a TV show, and you repeat it exactly as you heard it, matching the speaker's intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation as closely as possible. You essentially become a shadow of the speaker. You might pause after a sentence, then replay it, and say it along with them. It's a fantastic way to train your mouth to produce natural sounds and to train your ear to notice details like reductions and stress patterns. Many successful language learners swear by shadowing because it forces you to engage with real spoken language in a very active way. It's not passive listening. It's dynamic, and it really does wonders for your fluency as well. While practicing shadowing, you can also pay attention to those quick reductions we talked about, like gonna, wanna, lemme, dunno. Repeat them. Don't be shy or worry that you're losing your accent. Embrace these common contractions because they're part of everyday English. Then, when you hear them in real conversations, your brain will register them much faster. Oh yes, that's just gonna. I know what that means. Another powerful method is to expose yourself to different English accents deliberately. Don't limit yourself to just one style or region. For example, find a British podcast and follow it regularly, even if you don't understand everything at first. Watch some Australian YouTubers. Check out some interviews with Irish speakers. If you can, vary your content every so often so your ear gets used to the broader range of English sounds. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's incredibly helpful. Over time, you'll notice that your ability to adapt to new accents improves dramatically, so you won't freeze up if you suddenly find yourself talking to someone with a strong regional accent. Now let's talk about subtitles. Subtitles can be a friend or a foe. When you're watching a movie or a TV series, turning on subtitles in English can help you catch words you'd otherwise miss. It's a form of reading and listening together which can be beneficial. But be careful not to rely on subtitles 100% of the time. If you always read, you might not practice your raw listening skills. Here's a trick. Watch an episode of something you like with subtitles in English to get the gist. Then re-watch it without subtitles, paying close attention to the audio. Challenge yourself to see how much you can catch the second time around. Over time, you can reduce your reliance on subtitles altogether, especially for content that's at or below your current level. But for a show that's more advanced, you might keep the English subtitles on the first time just to help you gather context. The key is using subtitles as a tool, not a crutch. What about breaking down fast speech into smaller parts? This is vital. One of the biggest problems is that learners hear a rapid string of words and can't separate them. In English, words often get glued together by linking sounds. For instance, look at that might sound like look at that, or what do you want to do might come out as what do you want to do. This can feel overwhelming. The solution is to take a short clip, just a sentence or two, and listen carefully. Pause, rewind, and try to isolate the phrases. You might even write down what you hear in the contracted form if necessary. Then compare your phonetic transcription to the actual words. Over time, your ear will get faster at parsing these rapid sequences. Mimicking native speakers, especially those you find engaging, is another golden tip. If there's a TV character whose style of speaking you like, or a podcast host with a clear and pleasant voice, focus on them. Listen to short snippets, replay them, and try to mimic exactly how they speak. Pay attention not just to words, but to intonation and emotion. Are they excited, calm, confident? Try to capture that in your voice as you repeat the lines. This helps you internalize the music of the language, which is often more important than the grammar and vocab alone. People understand each other not just through words, but through tone, stress, and rhythm. When you begin to master those elements, your comprehension skyrockets, and your own spoken English becomes much more natural. Of course, one of the best ways to improve your listening is by immersing yourself in real-world situations. If you can talk with native speakers, whether in person or online, do it. Conversation exchanges, language meetups, or even professional networking events can be golden opportunities. And if you're feeling shy about it, remember, people are usually quite supportive when they see someone genuinely trying to learn their language, but you have to put yourself out there. The more you practice, the more comfortable your ears become. And guess what? Even if you can't physically meet native speakers, you can find them online through social media groups, apps, or even gaming communities. The point is to put yourself in situations where English is spoken in a spontaneous, unscripted way. You'll learn so much from hearing real people interact, as opposed to just listening to staged dialogues or slow textbook recordings. Now I know it can be frustrating when you start. You might understand only half of what's being said or less. You might feel silly shadowing along with a podcast host who speaks super quickly or mimicking an actor from your favorite show. But don't get discouraged. We all start somewhere. Remember those stories I shared at the beginning? People like Ricardo, Ayumi, Ahmed, all of them felt lost at first. But by using techniques like shadowing, deliberate practice with different accents, careful use of subtitles, and real-world conversations, they broke through their barriers. You can absolutely do the same. Here's a tip for maintaining motivation. Measure your progress in small steps. Maybe at first you aim to watch a 5-minute YouTube video in English without subtitles and catch at least 70% of the overall meaning. Keep track of your guesses. Then check yourself by turning on subtitles or reading the video transcript afterward. If you do this daily for a couple of weeks, you'll start noticing improvements. And noticing these small victories keeps you motivated and hungry for more. Let's talk about a specific daily routine you could try. Let's say you have 30 minutes to dedicate to listening practice each day. First, you pick a short audio clip. This could be a podcast segment, a scene from a TV show, or maybe a snippet from an online video. Make sure it's just 1 or 2 minutes long initially, something very manageable. Step 1. Watch or listen to it once without subtitles just to get the overall gist. Step 2. Watch it again with subtitles in English, not your native language, or read a transcript if it's available. Step 3. Write down any new words or expressions you encounter. Step 4. Play it again, pausing to shadow each line. You mimic the speaker's voice, intonation, and pacing. Step 5. Watch or listen one final time without subtitles to see how much you now understand. That's a compact routine that forces you to engage with the material in multiple ways. Pure listening, reading, writing, and speaking. It's powerful, and if you do it consistently, you'll see real progress. Another motivational point to keep in mind. Your listening comprehension will improve in stages, not all at once. At first, maybe you'll catch the main topic of a conversation. Next, you might identify keywords and specific details. Eventually, you'll hear smaller nuances, jokes, sarcasm, implied meanings. That's when you know you're really getting closer to the level of a near-native or advanced speaker. But you can't jump to the final stage in one giant leap. You go step by step, celebrating each improvement. A little story from my own experience might help illustrate this. I once worked with a student from Italy named Giulia. She was very bright, extremely dedicated, and she had a good grasp of English grammar, but she struggled with fast-spoken conversations. The first time she tried listening to a native podcast, she could only pick out a few random words. She felt so discouraged, like, I'll never get this. But she kept at it. She listened to the same podcast episodes multiple times, each time focusing on a different aspect. First the basic topic, then new vocabulary, then the speaker's accent and tone. She took notes, practiced shadowing small segments, and eventually she found herself looking forward to each new podcast episode. After a few months, she proudly told me that she could not only follow the conversation, but actually enjoy the humor and little nuances she used to miss. That's the power of consistent, focused practice. Let's also address something else. It's normal to feel self-conscious about your accent or your listening skills, especially if you compare yourself to native speakers or more advanced learners. But remember, you don't need to speak or listen perfectly to communicate effectively. Even if you have an accent, that's okay. Accents add flavor to your speech. What's important is that you understand others and can make yourself understood. The more you train your ear by listening, mimicking, and practicing, the more natural your pronunciation will become, and the easier it will be for your conversation partners to understand you. Don't get bogged down in the idea of perfect. Focus on effective communication and gradual improvement. If you ever feel stuck, try changing your practice materials to something that excites you. If you're bored with a certain podcast or TV show, find a new one. The best materials are the ones that keep you engaged. Love cooking? Find cooking shows or YouTube chefs who speak English in a way you like. Love sports? Watch interviews or game commentaries. Passion for the topic will keep you listening, and that's what matters. The more you genuinely enjoy listening, the less it feels like a chore, and the more your brain soaks up the language naturally. Remember, too, that you don't need to catch every single word. Native speakers themselves often don't catch every single word in a conversation. We rely on context, tone, and body language to fill in the blanks. Sometimes we ask for clarification if we miss something. That's perfectly normal. If you're in a real conversation and you miss a word, don't panic. Just ask, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Or, "I didn't catch that last part." This isn't a sign of failure. It's a normal human interaction. We do that even in our own first language sometimes. As you continue practicing, don't forget to reflect on how far you've come. Maybe you'll realize you can now watch half of a movie without needing subtitles. Or maybe you had a conversation with a native speaker and understood 80% of it. That's big progress. Let that feeling of accomplishment fuel you to keep going, because listening skills, once developed, open so many doors. You'll be able to enjoy English music and finally catch the lyrics, laugh at jokes in TV shows, follow a fast conversation at a party, or succeed in a work meeting without feeling lost. It's a game changer. Now I want to give you a gentle push to take action immediately. Don't just watch this video and think, "Okay, that's interesting," and then move on. I want you to pick at least one strategy from the ones I've mentioned, maybe shadowing or practicing with multiple accents or systematically using and removing subtitles, and try it today. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, actually do it. That's how you'll start building momentum. Tomorrow, try it again or add another technique. Keep the cycle going. The best time to start mastering listening skills is right now, while you're motivated and everything we talked about is still fresh in your mind. So to wrap things up, we've covered why understanding native speakers is difficult. Fast speech, reductions, different accents, slang, the informal nature of real English. We've talked about real-life stories of learners who struggled but found success through consistent practice and specific techniques. We explored the importance of strategies like shadowing, exposing yourself to various English accents, using subtitles wisely, breaking down fast speech, mimicking native speakers, and immersing yourself in real-world listening opportunities. We also touched on how to stay motivated by measuring small wins, choosing interesting materials, and remembering that progress is a journey, not an overnight transformation. You've got all these tips in your toolkit now. I believe in your potential to become a confident English listener who can keep up with native speakers in any situation, whether you're chatting with friends, traveling abroad, or sitting in a crucial job interview. The key is to practice regularly and trust the process. It's not always a straight line, and there will be days you feel frustrated. But if you stick with it, you'll definitely see results. Thank you so much for staying with me all this time. I hope you found these insights helpful, and most importantly, that you feel inspired to put them into practice right away. Remember, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel for more videos on improving your English skills. Your support really means a lot, and it helps me continue creating valuable content for you. Now get out there, find some interesting English content, put these tips into action, and watch your comprehension soar. I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to hear about your progress. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. You've got this.